All right, let's start this fantastic Friday with cricket. Cricket West Indies have confirmed the appointment of Roston Chase as the next regional test captain. News that was broken by Barbadian commentator Andrew Mason earlier on Friday as Chase replaces compatriot Craig Brathwaite. 6 men, Tevin Imlach, Joshua Da Silva, Jamel Warkan, Justin Graves, John Campbell and Chase were all reported to have been interviewed by CWI for the top job. Chase last played a test for the West Indies in 2023. And now he is the man in charge. Fazir Mohammed joins us via Zoom to assess this development. Faz, it's a pleasure to have you as usual. What do you make of this selection? Roston Chase is back, and he's back as captain.
Well, I mean, the way it's been touted by Cricket West Indies, it's a thorough process, it's a forward-thinking process, and so on. But at the end of the day, all that is going to matter is, will he make a difference as far as the performance of the West Indies team? Because he becomes the 15th West Indies captain since the end of the time of Richie Richardson, who was the last fully appointed captain who had a winning test match record. The others since then, including the likes of Courtney Walsh, Brian Lara, Jimmy Adams, Carl Hooper, Shivnarine Chandapal, Chris Gale, a few others have had 1 or 2 test matches filling in and so on. And of course, Craig Brathwaite, who's just ended his tenure, have all had losing records. So whether it's a new structure, a new format, a new visionary way of thinking, all of that doesn't really matter until and unless we see Roston Chase making a difference as far as the West Indies team's performance on the field. And that starts in a few weeks' time against Australia. But again, for someone who hasn't played Test cricket for a couple of years, but he has been in the West Indies squads in the white ball formats as recently as December of last year, so he's not on unfamiliar ground in that regard. But it's a huge challenge, whoever it was going to be. So the way it's being touted by Cricket West Indies, it's a new dawn. And yes, there might be a sense of optimism. But where is the evidence to suggest that that optimism is grounded on anything other than a lot of hype?
Faz, given the circumstances that we currently face, how do you rate this selection, this appointment?
Puzzling, because I was never in agreement with this process that they're making so much about. Because, again, as we discussed it last week, or might have been the week before, that selecting a captain, understanding not just in cricket, but in football, in any sport, it has to do a lot more with the intangibles. And yes, I understand the desire to appear transparent and certain metrics and whatever else. But at the end of the day, someone has to have a feel for the job, has to be able to show that leadership, has to be able to inspire. Roston Chase is going to be leading a team on June 25th at Kensington Oval, and he's going to get a rousing reception from the few fans who will probably be there at Kensington Oval for the first day of the first test against Australia. He's going to be leading a team with some players who've played Test cricket, never having seen Roston Chase in a Test team. Because again, it was March of 2 years ago that you mentioned, the last time he was in a West Indies test side. So again, he's going to have to build that confidence. And I'm not saying that he can't, but to repose all of this expectation on the basis of a new format and a new structure to select a captain seems just hopelessly out of touch with reality.
Yeah, Faz, I know that you have said in the past that you favored Joshua Da Silva for the job. Do you think it would have been too risky to go with someone like Joshua Da Silva? Because, for example, at this stage, he's in a battle, one would say, with Tevin Imlach for the wicket-keeping position. And when you consider as well that if Joshua Da Silva got the captaincy, then likely Tevin Imlach would not be involved the next time the West Indies are playing Test cricket after getting a chance for the first time in Pakistan and doing pretty well behind the stumps for sure, and at least one good innings in front of it. So do you suspect that might have taken away from Joshua Da Silva getting this job?
I'm glad the way you framed it, Ricardo. But before that, though, let me just make it clear. Even though I would have been in favor of Joshua De Silva to be captain, that in no way suggests that if he were captain, West Indies would all of a sudden be a more competitive and maybe even a winning unit. There's a lot more that has to be done for that to happen anytime in the foreseeable future. So that's one thing. The point you made about him now in a duel with Tevin Imlach, it reminds me of the situation when Darren Sammy became West Indies Test captain, because that spelled the end of Dwayne Bravo's Test career as an all-rounder. Because you couldn't have two all-rounders in the team, but it would upset the balance of the side in many ways. By the same token, does having Roston Chase, an off-spinning all-rounder with a decent Test match batting average 28, which is by international standards mediocre, by West Indies standards it's okay. He's got 85 Test wickets, 33 years of age, 49 Test matches, so he'll debut as Test captain in his 50th Test match. He plays as an off spin as well. So does that mean the end of Kevin Sinclair? Does that mean that it creates a conundrum in that regard? So yes, and the fact is that we talk about Joshua De Silva not being worth a place because he's been dropped. I mean, Roston Chase hasn't played Test cricket for 2 years. So there are many inconsistencies along the way. And again, it may all prove to be an inspired selection. We'll have to wait and see. But at the moment, those points that you raised just add to what I mentioned previously, that it just seems to be a situation where the cricketing thinking has been thrown out the window. No disrespect to Roston Chase because he's a pretty good cricketer in his own right, but the cricketing thinking about selecting a captain has been cast aside.
Yeah, and as we're making different points and trying to explore this new appointment, Faz, while you and Ricardo were talking, I thought also about if we're thinking about the future, right? We would probably consider somebody who is a bit younger, and I'm just saying that on the backdrop of, Roston Chase comes with a lot of experience. He would have played the game for quite some time. He's 33 years old, so experience always counts for something. But I'm here sitting thinking while listening to both of you, but what about, thinking about the future and grooming a player who is a bit younger? And I'm just going to use Joshua De Silva since his name came up in the previous point. He's 26 years old as well. Where do you stand on that point?
I have no problem with a 33-year-old being named captain. I'll tell you why. Because at 33 years of age, if he stays fit and produces with bat, with ball, and hopefully from a West Indies point of view, well, with a more competitive West Indies team, he could play on to his late 30s. And I mean, the days of thinking that when you're 30, the wrong side of 30 is the common expression, that really doesn't apply anymore in cricket with all the greater levels of fitness. And indeed, this might be seen as a temporary measure, maybe for a year, a couple of years. We don't know. It could be over after the first series. We'll have to wait and see. But again, I don't think his age conspires against him because, as we've seen from Roston Chase, he's been able to reinvent himself successfully. When he first came on the scene against India in 2016, and started in the second test match, a match-saving 100, and then 5 wickets in the same test match. You saw someone of quality, then he got a couple more hundreds, then he went off the boil, and then he's reinvented himself as a white ball player when people thought he would have never cut it in the white ball format of the game. So he has shown that adaptability, and clearly he's going to have to adapt and learn very quickly in the cauldron of test match cricket to be a test match captain. So to answer your specific question about age, I don't see being 33 years of age to be really a hindrance in any way, shape or form when we're talking about the issues of captaincy.
Okay, Faz, and one of the 6 key areas that were used to appoint this captain would have been leadership, right? From what you know of Roston Chase, and one of the things I can say is based on the test matches that he would have played, personally, his performances, have been fairly good. So I can say he would probably lead through his performances because he'd be motivated, of course, to try to produce. But in that leadership capacity, do you think, based on what you know, he has what it takes to, of course, get the rest of the team to rally behind him?
Quite frankly, I don't know. I mean, the issue is, can Roston Chase, behind the scenes, who's generally a soft-spoken individual, never has too much to say, although he's quite articulate, which I noticed was one of the criteria when the 6 points in assessing someone to be a West Indies captain. He may be able to. He may be able to inspire the players, because often you find that people who are soft-spoken can really crack the whip behind closed doors. But again, we'll have to wait and see. The fact is that Cricket West Indies have gone this way, and they've made a big deal about it with this new format and this new structure, as if it's going to really transform the West Indies performance on the field. We'll have to wait and see. With every captain that we've appointed, certainly since the end of the 1990s, it's been a wait and see. There was great expectation with Brian Lara, who captained the West Indies for 47 test matches but lost 26 of them. Does that say automatically he's a poor captain? Does it say it's with more of a poor team? There are many different variables tied into it. And therefore, with the West Indies, as we are, even though, again, coming out of the series in Pakistan, where the West Indies were able to beat Pakistan at their own game, can they take that with them some almost 6 months later into this series against Australia, the world champions right now, who would have been coming out of another World Test Championship final against South Africa? Will Roston Chase have what it takes to motivate a team that generally has mediocre performances to play beyond the averages?
Yeah, Faz, you described the selection of Roston Chase as captain as puzzling. That was the term you used just now. Can I ask you then, what would you describe the selection of Jomel Warrican as the vice captain? Because when we had discussed this last week, you had listed Jomel Warrican as a player that was, you know, a rank outsider to be even in the six. So wouldn't his selection as vice captain be just as puzzling, or maybe even more puzzling in your estimation than Roston Chase's?
To me, it's bewildering. But as I said, Lance, I'm happy to be proven wrong. I mean, Jomel Warrican certainly led with the ball in Pakistan, was the star performer. He was outstanding. I had been talking about Gudakesh Moti being the frontline left-arm spinner. Well, he certainly proved me wrong earlier in the season against South Africa, early last year in the couple of test matches, and then especially against Pakistan, out-bowling the Pakistanis. Does that mean he can translate that into a leadership role as vice captain? Again, I have my doubts, but once more, the opportunity is going to be there for me to be proven wrong. That we can see the leadership, we can see the forthright attitude on the field, leading the way forward together with Roston Chase. But again, based on the very little bit that I know about leadership and captaincy, and reading about what captains would have said about the task at hand and what is needed and so on, to me it's bewildering.
Yeah, let me ask you this though, Faz, because we have on this show, and you just did it, emphasized that for the past 30 years, since Richard Richardson wasn't captain anymore in the mid-1990s, every West Indies appointed captain has had a losing record. Given that fact, isn't it acceptable to think then that Cricket West Indies is trying to do something differently? They're trying to, as they described it, this groundbreaking procedure of selecting a new captain. Because everything we have done in the past 30 years has failed. So isn't it reasonable to give them a chance to do something different then? I mean, Roston Chase may not have been the favored person here, but they have come up with a procedural system that qualifies him ahead of the rest. Isn't it reasonable for us to think that, well, let's see what happens here, because for 3 decades we've been losing under all these different captains, who some of them appeared a lot more qualified than Roston Chase.
Absolutely.
Yes.
2 quick points. One, I omitted to mention that Ridley Jacobs, a stopgap captain,
Yes.
won both his test matches
Yes.
as in Bangladesh.
Yes.
So he would be the exception to the other
Yeah, but
names.
he was not a fully appointed captain,
No,
and you had
you're
made
right.
you had made that point earlier. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. He wasn't.
Yeah.
To answer your question, that's like saying that I can't make macaroni pie. Not for nothing can I make macaroni pie, but I just got a new oven. It's a convection oven. It's the very latest in technology. It has Wi-Fi. It can do it on its own and so on. But I still have
Is
core
that a Trini
ingredients.
macaroni pie or a Bayesian macaroni pie?
Trini,
A Trini macaroni
hello.
pie, please, please, please. A
Yeah.
Trini macaroni pie. A
Okay.
Trini macaroni pie. But still, I don't know how to put the ingredients together. I can't get the right balance. I don't know what I'm doing. But yet still, I have this brand new, spanking, shiny oven that saves on energy, does it on its own, but the macaroni pie still comes out tasteless. The point I'm making is that a new process and a new way of doing things is fine. We certainly, I wish Roston Chase all the best as West Indies captain, Jomel Warwick and likewise. But there's no evidence to suggest that it's going to be any different simply because he's working with the same players who have the West Indies where they are, including himself.
Yeah, I get that point. 3 consecutive Barbadians now appointed Test captain Faz. Jason Holder, then Craig Brathwaite, and now Roston Chase.
And I'm sure people are going to read things into that. That there's a Bajan conspiracy to only have a Bajan as captain or for whatever reason. But who would, with the benefit of hindsight, wasn't Jason Holder an inspired choice? Given what he had to cope with and face and the challenges that he faced and the results he was able to produce occasionally for the West Indies, for himself and for the team. And Craig Brathwaite, who would have thought that the fact that he was a stopgap captain 4 times and lost all 4, that he would have won his first full test series in Bangladesh and won a couple of test matches along the way, scored 100 in Perth and so on. So again, we can go down that rabbit hole of parochialism and insularity. But again, the issue to me, I could care less if he's from Barbados or if he's from St. Martin or if he's from Sabre or St. Eustatius. The point is, can this individual, by dint of his leadership, bring about a fundamental improvement in West Indies performances on the field of play in Test match cricket?
Yeah, I hardly think that the issue of parochialism would come up in this context, though, Faz, because because usually what people say is that the people who are in charge of West Indies cricket would look out for their own. But neither Holder, Brathwaite, nor now Chase have become captain with a Barbadian at the head of West Indies cricket. So I hardly think they would go there. But Faz, as usual, we do appreciate your input. And like you, I hope that Roston Chase does well here because we are all West Indians. We would like to see the team do well.
Yeah.
And I think we need to support him, whether people think that he was the best choice or not. I don't think that's really an issue right now. But I guess it's an issue we'll continue to talk about, Faz.
Yes, indeed. Support him, yes, from a fan point of view.
Yes.
But from a media and journalist point of view, be as impartial and as harsh if necessary. And
Yeah.
I think, and one final point, you mentioned that, Ricardo mentioned Andrew Mason broke the news. Could I point out that one Joseph Reds Pereira gave me the news 3 hours earlier
Than Mason did.
than Mason did?
Well,
All right.
Reds has been in this for 50 years, which is longer,
Reds
than
has-
Mason has been in it.
Reds has a finger on the pulse of people don't even know he has the finger on their pulse.
Yeah, wow. Well, thanks for that, Faz.
Yeah, Ricardo and Mariah, this is going to be a topic that, will resonate throughout the Caribbean for a while.
You know when it
And
will
because
stop?
Chase was not the most fancied person for this position. But you know what? I take your point, Ricardo, and I quite understand the point that you're making because captaining the West Indies is not a straightforward job. And as I said to Faz just now, a lot of appointed captains who were considered far more qualified than Roston Chase failed miserably. Yeah. So there's something about captaincy of a West Indies team that is not very good, to be honest, that Faz used the word intangibles. Yeah. Maybe Chase has something. We've got to, see what happens.
And we've seen that in an example from Darren Sammy. Like, when he was appointed back in his time, a lot of people had opposition to that.
Yes.
But then you looked at Darren Sammy and the manner in which he got the team to rally behind him, and he was able to produce results. And I think the discussion will only end when Roston Chase takes up the role as captain. His first assignment is against Australia, starting in Barbados, and gets the team going, gets the results. I think that is the only time people will probably sit back and say, okay, it was a good selection. But from now till that date, they're going to say a lot of things not in support of
Yeah,
him.
let me not discount Fazier's point, though, because what he ended with was saying that as fans of West Indies cricket, it would be good to support Roston Chase. But as journalists, we have to assess and critically analyze the choice. And the fact is, he has not been in the test team for more than 2 years. His batting average is very moderate. His bowling is okay. So there are factors that would suggest that, how did they make this decision? But we got the press release today that was very detailed in the different measuring standards they'd used, and they came up with Chase. So let's see what happens.
Well, Lance and Mariah, for me, whether you're qualified or not can be relative. And it is quite often relative to what is required at a particular time. There are points where you make long-term appointments, and there are points where you make short-term appointments. Sometimes you need to plug a hole, and the individuals who seem most qualified may not necessarily be the best person to plug that hole, because what you're looking for is a short-term fix. Roston Chase, for me, more than anything else, is a short-term fix. And I'll go even further to say the fact that Jamil Warrican has been named vice-captain means, in my estimation, that there is no one other individual that Darren Sammy and his crew are certain is ready or will be ready in short order, either by the quality of their performances or their leadership standards to take over this West Indies team. And that's why I think it's a smart decision. It's a smart decision to put someone in the role who, yes, has experience, who has been there. You look at Roston Chase's numbers. Yes, by world standard, they are not great, but as Faz pointed out, by West Indies standards, they are decent. And so you do not destroy or potentially destroy a career of a youngster. You don't destroy the career of a Tevin Imlach. You don't destroy the career of a Alec Athanaze. You don't destroy the career of any of the other youngsters in the side by putting the burden of being West Indies captain, and not just being West Indies captain, but being West Indies captain and taking over at a most difficult time. Let's not forget, a large part of the reason why Craig Brathwaite was never really under any tremendous pressure to be removed as West Indies Test captain is because there has not been a suitable alternative. And that's the position that we found ourselves in. I wouldn't have been surprised, for example, if they went back for a Jason Holder. That's not the case. Jason Holder was the individual in my mind that they might go back for because, of course, he's done it before. Roston Chase hasn't captained before. But it doesn't surprise me that the profile of the captain is someone like a Roston Chase. In my opinion, it had to be someone like a Roston Chase at this point of the game. How long does he last? I don't know, but it is irrelevant because Roston Chase's success is not just down to Roston Chase. In fact, I will go as far as to say, in large part, is not down to Roston Chase. In large part, is down to the quality of the players that he has around him.
Yeah.
Well, the past 30 years of our cricket, endorses the point that you just made.
And we shouldn't expect miracles, by the way, Lance and Mariah.
No, but there's no way anybody could expect a test captain to come into this side and have miracles.
That's the point. So it didn't
There is
matter
no
who,
way.
but you don't want it to be someone who you think genuinely has what it takes to lead West Indies forward in the future, and then you destroy that career by making them captain of a losing team at this stage.
Yeah.
Break time? Yeah?
If you say.
Yeah?